培养去思考这件事，然后让他去看看别人说，别人是 reading right，应该是 read 这样，可以就是开始去往要不然你说到时候全部 work 的时候，他们就还开始思考，所以我需要你。对，那我想做的就是也是要进入当地人，因为这些东西是希望都是他们对，所以我们这样弄得散散，然后你现在就是可以可不可能？都连着吗？
没有点我可能还在研究。因为他如果他自己在设计一个意见，
对，我跟你讲，如果要付钱，可以大家都在一起，我也可以付。就是对，因为有时候你的问题是说什么，只有3题要换什么，我是可以付那个钱，是说我现在目的就是什么东西要考坏，不要散来散去。对，那引流我今天跟你讲的是1点。
对，那个我没有看懂。
就是你现在是不是你每天都会讲说，但是 maybe on average 是怎么想？可是我希望，我觉得至少我是一个 visual writer， 我希望你可以给我一张 PPT slide， 然后讲得像一回事这样子，就是一个很简单的 PPT slide， 几个分钟，你可以这个 format 每个礼拜都一样，但是你就是会要包的，对，就是你会说你的 average PPT 多少是这一个，好，然后那个前3题各自的事情下来，然后对，不用private， 你就是为了一个 Excel， 每一个人的那个
我已经有对，
其实我们是对我会讲这就是这个我会讲，可是我会希望说你可以每个礼拜3 reading time 的那个 speaking， 对，然后那个我们这样去看，
做一个 bar chart，
对。Alright. We're gonna move on to the new chapter, but I think let's spend some time on the task next week. Okay? So you know your group members and also the thesis that you're gonna critique, right? Okay. So these are, and I'm not sure whether you have time to go through the guidelines or not. Okay, so let me briefly go over the guidelines so you know what to do. So next week for each group, you have at least 15 minutes, but no more than 20 minutes. Please do not go over 20 minutes, okay, for your group presentation. So first of all, as all the presentation, you need to introduce your group members and then talk about who is in charge of what section. And then briefly talk about what is the study, okay, what the study is about, okay, because half of your class hasn't had the chance to read the study yet. So they need to get some idea about what the study is about. Then the critique needs to include the following parts. In fact, last year, okay, it has been for years that your seniors, 学长学姐, they actually take a midterm individually, and these are their midterm questions. And for their midterms, they read a journal article on site. And right after their reading, they have to answer all these questions. Okay, that's what they did. But this year, I tried to make it, okay, change it into a different format. Is that I hope that in groups you can help each other. So I don't want you just 分工, alright, just distribute the word without collaboration. So what does that mean? It means that, you take care part 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last one all together. And I think that will lose the significance of this group presentation. I really hope that you can get this opportunity to get to know how each one of you respond. Help each other, because this is a group project. Even, for example, Angie is taking care of question 2, but others, okay, help her with with that part. So it's a group project. It's not individual sub-presentation. Okay. So our literature review, and this is what we have been covering in our class. Talk about, you need to think about whether the theories and research covered, included in the study, are relevant, critical, enough, good enough. Okay. All right. And then, do you think the author did a good job? Fundamentally, what is the purpose of doing this? I want you to foresee your thesis in 1 year. That's my purpose. Because when you have the chance to study others' thesis, you have a very concrete idea about what you need to do, okay, in 1 or 1.5 years later, at least for your proposal. So you get the idea, very concrete idea. Okay? So for you, that's for your literature review. And then move on to, definitely this is a qualitative methodology course, and our focus will be on methodology. And this time, I want you to focus on interviews, because I think for our students in this department, if they use mixed methods, qualitative methods, mostly they use interviews. Okay, so I want you to have a better idea about the interview. First of all, the participants. Remember, the very first class, we talked about different ways of sampling. Okay, like convenient sampling, purposeful sampling, okay, variety of techniques for sampling, for selecting the participants. So, do you think the author explained why and how the participants were selected? Okay, so your critique on the participants, this is the most important part here. What were the interview questions? And I want you to pay close attention to how the interview questions were designed. Okay? For each researcher, your task is to think about what questions you want to ask. And there are certain procedures to develop the interview questions. Okay? Did the researcher develop a question based on some theoretical framework? Or if the researcher, what exactly, okay, the interview questions were designed? And what about the data collection? How many times and when? So that's data collection. Data analysis, okay, the researcher should explain how they analyzed and interpreted the data. Okay. And lastly, do you think the interview question data analysis can really answer the questions? Okay. For example, this morning I was reviewing a journal article. I suggest the journal to reject the article because I really don't think the way of how the data collected, the interview questions and the data collected can address the questions. If the data you collected cannot address the question, sorry, so I just have to reject the journal article. Okay, so ask yourself, do you think the data, so questions, interview questions are so critical. If you didn't ask the right questions, do you still remember the figure? Remember, we have the target, then we all want to ask the right question. Remember the validity. You ask questions. Yes, you did ask questions, but did you ask the right questions? If you didn't ask the right questions, you will not be able to hit the target to address the research questions. So please pay attention to how the interview questions were generated, were designed. Okay, ask yourself, did the researcher ask the right questions? Okay. So are the questions trustworthy? Are the questions valid? Okay. All right, and in order to do that, today I'm going to show you 2 video clips. One is about designing semi-structured interview. The other one is about data analysis. Okay, so you have something to refer back to for your critique. Okay? And then, okay, I'm sure that you also have a course like this, right? It's a requirement for all the students. Did you have to take a course, something like human subjects? Do you? For the general education, 通识课, you have something like, right? Ethics, right? Research ethics. It's pretty much like that, okay? So there are certain research ethics for all the graduate students to take and to follow the guidelines, okay? For other international students, you probably didn't know what happened last year in Taiwan. It was a huge event and it was about research ethics, okay? So we always tell our advisees, okay, you don't know, one day you will become such an important figure, okay, in Taiwan or worldwide. People will definitely go back and look at your thesis and to see how much you wrote by yourself or you copied from others. Okay, and then don't make your advisor also famous, like famous too, because of what you did right or you didn't write, because what you copied and from others without giving proper citation. I think that's the point. Each time when I have the chance to listen to all the like 名嘴, all those how would be a good term for them, like those political figures, okay, they were addressing the issues. I really think they need to take a course on APA. So then they will know what they are talking about. Because they don't have that knowledge, so I think all the critique just doesn't make sense. Okay? Copying others' words is not 100% incorrect. It is just a matter of whether you have provided appropriate citations and whether you know the block quotation, all those rules. Okay, so when you are taking academic writing, please be sure to make sure that you know what it means by block quotation and citations. Okay, so it's not about, oh, you have used someone else's words, but as long as I gave the citation, proper citations, that should be fine. It's academically ethical, right? So here, today we will also address this part. It's about the trustworthiness, okay? So trustworthiness, so when my advisee provide their proposal, I always ask them to offer a section called the trustworthiness of the study. Because after all, what you need to ask yourself as a researcher is, what should other people trust my study? How would other people trust, or why should they trust my study? Okay, so they need to have a section to address this part. So in order to address this part, it involves 2 aspects. The first aspect is, Elsa, could you read this part? 2 aspects.
Which aspects of trustworthiness was practiced and which aspects of trustworthiness was not practiced.
Okay, so we have 2 aspects. One is called competence practice. The other one is called ethical practice. So in order to say, hey, you got to trust my study, it means that my study is competent. It also means my study is ethical. Both. It has to fulfill these 2 requirements. Okay? But when we say competent in terms of what? In terms that it has to be credible, it has to be rigorous, it also has to be useful. So we will go back to these 3 important concepts. So you will use these 3 important concepts to critique the study that you will be critiquing and reviewing next week. Is it? Okay? All right. use these three important concepts. And what about ethical practice? When we say that it got to be ethical, what does that mean? It also involves assurance. Okay, so we will talk about assurance, we'll talk about honor and protection, we'll also talk about cultural differences. These three aspects, okay, to make sure you have an ethical study. Alright? So I want you to take a look at which aspect was practiced. Okay, some of them probably will cover one or two, some of them will cover this or this. Okay, it really depends on the situation of the study. Okay. And lastly, you will talk about, I think perhaps there are tons of weaknesses, even though they have proposal hearing, even they have a committee, okay, outside committee members and professors from their department. There's no perfect study, okay, but you don't have to give every single suggestion. What about the three major ones? Okay, for this, please provide three suggestions, and what your group perceives as the most important and critical improvements that still need to be made. Okay, three major suggestions, if necessary. Unless it's a perfect study, no improvements are needed. Do you think it's possible? No. Okay, so three major suggestions. All right, so ready? So what we will be covering today, let's get started with designing semi-structured interview, and also for data analysis. This part, let's start it with these two parts, okay? So you get some information to critique the methodology of the study. Okay. Okay. All right, so the first one is semi-structured interview guide. Elena? Okay, I think the title, let's see.
6 tips for designing a semi-structured interview guide. So, you want to design a guide or protocol for your semi-structured interview as part of your qualitative research project? Not sure of the best way to do this? I will show you how to develop the right questions and ask them in the right order so you can get the information you need every time. A semi-structured interview is a verbal exchange where one person, the interviewer, elicits information respectfully from another person, the interviewee or respondent, through a series of questions. It should feel like a good conversation. First, remember the questions you develop rely very heavily on your knowledge of the topic. If you are researching a topic that you know well, for example, if you are a school nurse researching students' experiences taking medication in a school setting, then you are in a good place. Whether you know something or nothing at all about the topic, always read the literature before developing your guide. Once you have read the literature and have a good grasp of the topic, return to your research question and ask yourself, what specific information do I want to get from the semi-structured interview? Make a list of everything you want to find out using the semi-structured tool. For example, I want to find out what teachers do that make children want to come to school, or I want to know how children's friends influence their behavior in school. Make sure that each item on the list only consists of one idea. Questions asking about more than one thing can be unclear, confusing, and introduce bias. Now you can start drafting your questions. Remember, in qualitative research, our aim is to get the respondent's perspective, so we must use open questions. An open question is one that cannot be simply answered with a yes or no, but that requires more in-depth answers. For example, what kind of activities did you do at school today? Also, never use leading questions. For example, you like coming to this school, don't you? Now let's get to the structure of the guide. The first set of questions in your research guide must be broad questions that put the interviewee at ease and encourage them to give you their perspective. For example, tell me about your experience of coming to this school. The middle section is where you pursue ideas in more depth and where you get the answers to your specific research questions. The interviewee is now at ease, feeling valued because you have listened to them. Now you may ask more detailed questions and use probes to build on the respondent's previous answers. For example, you mentioned that you like coming to school because your teachers are very nice. What sort of things does your teacher do that makes you say they are nice? In the concluding section, here you can seek clarification for anything that is still unclear and also ask questions that take into account any theories you may be using in your research. For example, research has shown that boys learn differently from girls. In your school, how do your teachers meet the different learning needs of boys and girls? Let's summarize. Number 1, make sure you are familiar with the topic. This helps you to ask relevant questions. Number 2, make a list of what information you want to get from the semi-structured interview. This helps you formulate questions that will provide an answer to your research questions. Number 3, always use open questions and never use leading questions. Number 4, start with broad open questions. This puts the interviewee at ease and encourages them to give you their perception. Number 5, in the middle section, ask more detailed questions. By now your interviewee is relaxed, feeling listened to and more at ease to provide you with detailed answers that will provide answers to your specific research questions. Number 6, in the concluding section, seek clarification for anything that is still unclear and ask questions that link to any research theories you may be using. Feeling ready to design your guide? You are in luck. Download a free template that you can use to create your semi-structured interview guide right away.
Okay, so I want you to discuss in your group and to identify the most 2 important messages that you have learned from this video clip. Okay, each group, could you identify 2 most important messages that you have learned? That's something you didn't know and that you gained from watching this video clip. Or do you need to watch it again? Do you? No? Okay. So discuss. Perhaps you can help each other to get the most important critical information. Okay, what about this group? Could you name one important message based on your discussion?
So based on our discussion that we agreed on to highlight part where we should ask open-ended questions and not leading questions.
Okay, don't ask leading questions, okay? So don't you like, you do not like, or you like a, right? Okay, this is kind of leading questions, so don't ask leading questions. Okay, what about this group? Any, the same? Then what about the second important message?
We have to check how it's going to be organic and those for
Okay. Yeah, I think this group has pointed out very, very important message is I cannot emphasize more the importance of literature review. Why? Why?
Because the questions, like,
after you read it into the literature review, you can put together a well organized interview questions.
Okay. Perhaps not that directly, but yes. Because after your literature review, we'll get to know the research gap. And because of that research gap, then you know what to go further, including the research purpose and research questions. Otherwise, what are we doing? You are repeating the same design, asking the same questions. Then you don't have to do it again, right? The previous research will give you the answers. What we need to do is we need to be able to identify the research gap, so that here comes the purpose of your study, because you want to fill in the gap. And because you need to fill in the gap, you conduct the research, address the research questions to fill in the gap. Okay, so started to feel like literature review because it's such a critical step for your research. Okay, what about this group? Any reminder?
Where I like to use the part that starts with open-ended questions and make the interview a easy conversation first.
Yeah. Hey, okay. I think, yes, we all know this is study, this is research, but we as researchers, we need to what? Help our interviewees feel ease. Because once they get so nervous, it's difficult, very difficult for them to share any ideas with us, and you are not able to get rich data. Okay, so start with broad questions. Okay, help them to feel ease, and then gradually move on to the interview questions. Okay, this is extremely important. Although nobody will say you need to do it, but it is such a critical step. Okay, to help you to move further with your study. Okay, what about this group here? One more reminder. With the same. No leading question, the importance of literature review, open bar with open-ended questions to help our
And build trust between each other.
the trust between each other, and then treat it as a conversation. Rather than I ask, you answer. It's a conversation between the researcher and the researched. Okay? I have, perhaps you need some, here's the transcription, okay? If you want to go quickly over, this is the transcription, okay? So, heavily on the knowledge of the topic, yes. So, let's say, how will you get the knowledge? It said that the success of the interview relies on the knowledge of the topic. How can you get yourself informed about the topic? Literature review. Literature review. So once again, literature review is so important. Okay? Once you are getting well informed about the literature review, you will not ask leading questions because you have a very clear idea about what to ask. Okay? Yeah. All right. Okay. So I will have Elena upload this. All right. This transcript. So you if you want to remind yourself more, particularly this summary, all the summary. This can be used, serve as the guideline, okay, for your critique, all right, for your critique methodology, okay, particularly data collection. All right, now for data analysis, okay, so let's get started with data analysis. Again, there are also 6 tips for analyzing data. I will strongly suggest you to take some notes, okay? All right, and then you can discuss the most critical
information that you gathered from this interview, this video clip.
6 tips for analyzing data from a semi-structured interview. So you have completed your semi-structured interview. Well done, you. Not sure what to do now? I will show you how to analyze your data so you can produce meaningful answers to your research question. In qualitative research, data analysis happens at the same time as data collection, and the process is iterative, meaning you return to the data often, and each time you do, you become more steeped in the data. It requires ample time for iteration and reflection. There are many different analytical frameworks that researchers use to guide the interpretation of their qualitative data, but that's the subject of another video. For this video, I will simply focus on what you need to do with the interview data you have collected. Immediately after an interview, make notes of the ideas and questions that occur to you. Next, organize and store your data. You must label your data in a way that does not attach participants' names to the data, and store your data in a way that ensures you fulfill the promise of confidentiality you made to the participant at the interview stage. If you want to refresh yourself about collecting data, go back and watch our short video, 6 tips for conducting semi-structured interviews. If you have recorded your interview, and I really recommend that you do, then you need to transcribe the audio or video. Transcription is simple but time-consuming. You simply listen to the recording and write down verbatim, i.e. word for word, what the participant says. If you want to save time, you could consider using software to help you transcribe, or use a transcription service. I have some links below on useful software and transcription services. Once you have your transcript, you are now ready to start interpreting your data. You can do this manually, but if you have a lot of data, say more than 10 interviews, then I strongly advise you use a software program. I use NVivo, and I have put some links to that software. You do need to take the time to learn how to use it, but there are tons of videos online to help you learn fast. I have put some links down below. First, read your transcript and identify themes. Give the theme a name. This process is called coding. Keep notes of why you have named the theme in a specific way. These notes are called memos. Note also in your memos any exemplars, i.e. things that you were not expecting, and those that surprised you. Once you've completed reading and coding one transcript, repeat the process for other interviews and start to identify themes that recur across your interviews. Then writing up is easy. Just describe the codes, the links between the themes, and any patterns you noticed. You can also compare your themes and patterns to existing theory. Does it agree or disagree? Let's summarize. 1. Immediately after the interview, make notes. 2. Label and store your data. 3. Transcribe your data. 4. Code the data. 5. Identify thematic patterns. 6. Write up your findings. If you found this video useful, please like and hit the subscribe button. Remember to click on the bell so you can be reminded when we upload new videos.
What is Institute for Development? Institute for Development,
Okay, so again, please discuss in your group. Okay, I think I'll explain some of the important concepts, and I think they are also very helpful for your own research too. Go ahead.
Interview will feel
organize and store the data. And then extract the data. If you have interviews with them, you can use the software. And then you can compare your thing with your and this is all
No. The first software only transfer data. The second one, yeah. So talking to memos, the memos to see because you still have to compare what you found to the existing so I think that is, I'm not quite sure if it's a comparison or is it called I'm trying to make this apply into theories, agreeing.
What's the
All right, what about this group here? Any important
I
message?
think that the most important part is that we need to compare our findings with the existing kind of theories to see where it disagrees or agrees with it.
Okay, all right, but that will be the very end
Yeah.
part already, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but before we do that, a lot more steps need to take. Okay, a lot more steps need to take. But yes, okay, qualitative research after all, at the end, they are comparing here all the theories that if you can generate certain kind of theories, in what ways they are similar or different from the existing theories that we can see from the literature. Okay, very good. Okay. So what about this group here? Anyone else from your group want to say something? Okay.
Make notes right away, so you
Yeah.
won't forget any detail.
Yes, I think this is such a critical step, okay? Is that in fact when we are listening to our interviewees, we have a lot of ideas. It's like something you will say, hey, how come she says so? Why is it different from what I have assumed? We say, yeah, exactly. This is what I read. Like what literature also says so. So quickly jot down all the ideas because those are very fresh and also insightful. Okay, so don't think that you're gonna wait your data analysis until you finish all the data collection. It will be too late. Okay, particularly if you need to interview more cases, you need to jot down. Okay, so that means that you are analyzing while you are collecting your data. Data analysis starts at the same time while you are collecting your data. Okay, this is an important concept, okay? Because many of you might think you will start your data analysis until you finish all the data collection. Wrong. I cannot say that you will do nothing, but 2 ways at the same time will be much, much more helpful and effective. Okay? Any important message that you have gained from the video? Okay.
After the interview, we need to transcribe the data that we have got from the interviewer. And once that is done, we interpret all the data, and there was this software which was NVivo. So through that, we can interpret the data that we have got.
Okay, all right. So this group has mentioned about NVivo. So we're after NVivo. Okay, so before we code the data, we need to have data interview transcription. It's not NVivo yet. NVivo is used to analyze the data. Okay, but transcription. It used to be, I told you, right, that we listen to it and we transcribe word by word manually by ourselves. But right now we do have the software, okay? But some of them is free online, so you can get them transferred by software. And after you have all the transcripts, NVivo, okay, particularly you have multiple cases, I think NVivo will be very useful, because that will help you to generate some codes, okay? The codes, we ourselves need to assign the codes. But NVivo will help you to organize. They will help you say, here, you have the similar information. So we as researchers need to decide, so then, what kind of codes? How are we gonna label to provide the coding to similar transcripts? Do you understand? So we, as a researcher, we still need to get ourselves informed and knowledgeable enough to provide the coding. NVivo will not tell you what coding that you need to assign. But NVivo is really good at telling you about all the data sets, okay, which 100 cases that your participants have said so. But what exactly the coding you need to assign, it's you need to offer the coding, okay? All right, we will invite a professor from Taipei Daxue, okay? Because this professor has been using NVivo for her research. So she's gonna come and tell us how she used NVivo to help her analyze the data, okay? I think it's the end of November, okay? And then, that's coding. What about memo? I think memo is like your notes, okay? Your notes. So memo means that you quickly note down. Whenever you give a coding, you quickly note down something that surprised you. Like, oh, this is different, okay? And then you give your explanation why you want to name this, why you want to provide this code for what has been found in the interview transcript. It's like the conversation for yourself to document why you give certain codes, okay? Something interesting, something surprising, something new that you have found from the transcript. Quickly document your inner thoughts through memos. Very, very important. Otherwise, by the end, sometimes it takes so long to interview several cases. Without memos, you cannot memorize everything. It's too much in your head. So memos will help you to document your inner thoughts, okay? After you have all the codes across different cases, you will be able to see some things, okay? These 3 coding equal to a major thing. For example, if you see that they are talking about they're anxious of speaking, they're anxious of reading, they're anxious of this, then the theme is the anxiety of learning a foreign language. Because you can observe all the codings about anxiety, nervousness, incompetence, and okay, all fear, all this can be considered a major theme that is anxiety. Okay, and then you probably will be able to see when you ask the participants to talk about their feelings. So when they talk about speaking, they will talk about their fear, their anxiety. So you see there's a pattern there. There's a pattern. Whenever they talk about public speaking, they talk about the fear, the anxiety. So then you will probably come to a conclusion that participants, it's so easy for the participants to feel nervous when they are on the stage. Okay, so that's the theory that you generate based on your data. So you see the step by step, okay? Step by step. Sometimes, okay, let me ask you a question. If you are a researcher, are you happier when you have the same finding as the pre-existing literature, or when you have different findings from the existing literature? Which one? Well, you should feel happier.
Not the same result.
Okay, not the same results. Why?
Because you have something to write about.
Because you have something to explain, to write about, to offer. And that's probably something that you can contribute. Okay. And although I think the majority, 70 or 80% of the times, you will have similar or even the same findings, but it's just that 20 or 30% that you have different insight. Okay, and that's where your contribution is, right? So when you have something different, don't panic. It's like, how come it's different? Hey, that's where that you can contribute. You can offer your explanations from your study. Okay, did I ask your group already, right? What about this group here? Anything that you would like to offer? Anything different? No? We have addressed everything? Okay, from the beginning till the end. Okay, let me summarize very quickly. First of all, please do not wait data analysis until the end of data collection. Data collection analysis should go hand in hand and happening at the same time. Secondly, make good use of all the softwares for transcriptions and for data analysis, particularly when you have multiple cases. When you have only one case or two, I think it's just easier. Okay. Thirdly, software can do a lot for you, but software cannot replace you and your brain, your observation, okay? Particularly when you need to assign a coding, a labeling. It is based on your study, your literature review. Can you offer appropriate coding and also generate appropriate themes? And who can observe the patterns? You. Okay, NVivo will not be able to observe the pattern for you. NVivo is not that smart yet. Maybe one day, okay, but not now. It is still you, researcher, with your informed knowledge, okay? Will you be able to make that, observe the links? You say, when this so, and this leads to this. This is you where you cannot be replaced by NVivo yet. Okay, so this is the whole process. Okay, I think the power of conducting qualitative research is the researcher will be able to provide a theory, okay, by authentic case, by the data that they gather from their cases. Okay, so that's something that qualitative researchers can offer and contribute to. Okay. Anything else? So this is the part for conducting interviews and then analyze interview data, interview transcripts. Hi.
Question. So you said that NVivo is not
complete, like perfect software for us to use. What in case the interviews say something unclear in terms of your pronunciation or moreover if we do interview in another language. Then we still to do rechecking, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Transcribe.
Yeah, true. Okay, for example, MV or Poly will not be able to help you translate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Transcribe fully because that parts are not clear.
Yeah. So when it is not clear, don't think that any software can help you to say what your interviewee didn't say clearly. You always, it's you, interviewer, you need to go back and double check and make sure those unclear parts are clarified. Okay. Softwares cannot do that much. That's why humans are still powerful. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Go ahead. Softwares can do anything for us, right? Okay, so let's take a break. Thank you.